Habermas, The Divided West, explores the political and ideological divisions between Europe and the United States, particularly in the context of globalization, the war on terror, and differing approaches to democracy and human rights. Habermas, a staunch advocate of constitutional democracy and the European model of social welfare, offers a critical examination of the geopolitical and philosophical rifts that have emerged between these two Western powers. One of the core themes of the book is the transatlantic divide that intensified after the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq in 2003. Habermas argues that the divergent responses to the war exposed deeper ideological differences between the U.S. and Europe. The U.S. embraced a unilateral interventionist approach, which was rooted in its belief in its global dominance and moral responsibility to spread democracy, even by force if necessary. In contrast, European nations, particularly those like Germany and France, favored a multilateral approach, grounded in diplomacy and international cooperation, through institutions like the United Nations. For Habermas, this division points to a fundamental philosophical clash regarding the use of power, international law, and the pursuit of global peace. Habermas links this geopolitical schism to broader historical trends. He traces the rise of American exceptionalism and how it has shaped the U.S.'s foreign policy. This sense of exceptionalism, which suggests that the U.S. is a unique and superior force for good in the world, underpins the American approach to global governance. It is connected to a messianic belief in spreading democratic values, even if it requires military intervention. Habermas contrasts this with Europe's historical experience, particularly the devastation of the two world wars, which led to the rise of a more cautious, consensus-based approach to international relations. The European Union itself, according to Habermas, is an embodiment of this multilateralist philosophy, a project of peace and integration, aimed at overcoming nationalism and fostering cooperation among states. In The Divided West, Habermas also examines the philosophical underpinnings of these two different political cultures. He draws on his earlier work in critical theory and discourse ethics to argue that Europe's approach is more aligned with communicative action, a principle that emphasizes rational deliberation, consensus building, and respect for pluralism. In contrast, he critiques the American reliance on a more Hobbesian, realist view of politics, where power and national interests take precedence over global dialogue and cooperation. This difference is also reflected in how each power views international law. Europe tends to see international law as a crucial tool for ensuring peace and stability, while the US has shown a willingness to bypass international agreements when they conflict with its national interests. Another important aspect of the book is Habermas's discussion of human rights and democracy. He argues that the U.S.'s focus on spreading democracy through military intervention is flawed because it overlooks the importance of creating the conditions for genuine democratic participation. Democracy, for Habermas, is not simply about holding elections, but about fostering a vibrant civil society where citizens can engage in free, open discourse. Europe's model, with its emphasis on social welfare and economic equality, provides a more fertile ground for this kind of democratic engagement. Habermas warns that exporting democracy without addressing underlying social and economic inequalities will lead to superficial, fragile democracies that lack true popular support. Habermas also addresses the role of religion in global politics. He acknowledges that religion continues to play a significant role in shaping political ideologies, particularly in the US, where religious fundamentalism has had a profound impact on policy decisions, including foreign policy. In contrast, Europe has largely moved toward a more secular, post-religious society, where religion plays a less central role in public life. Habermas sees this as another factor contributing to the transatlantic divide, as the U.S.'s foreign policy is often influenced by a moralistic, religiously inflected worldview, while Europe's approach is more secular and pragmatic. Despite these differences, Habermas does not see the transatlantic divide as insurmountable. He argues that both Europe and the US have a shared commitment to the principles of liberal democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, which could serve as a foundation for renewed cooperation. However, this would require a rethinking of the US's approach to international relations, moving away from unilateralism and toward a more multilateral, dialogue-based model. He calls for a reinvigoration of global institutions, such as the United Nations, to facilitate this shift. Habermas believes that the challenges of globalization, such as climate change, terrorism, and economic inequality, can only be effectively addressed through international cooperation and dialogue. A key part of this shift, according to Habermas, would involve a more robust global public sphere. Drawing on his theory of communicative action, he advocates for the creation of transnational forums, where citizens from different countries can engage in dialogue and debate about global issues. This global public sphere would allow for more democratic participation in global governance and would help to counter the dominance of nation-states and their narrow, self-interested agendas. For Habermas, the development of such a sphere is essential to overcoming the democratic deficits that plague both national and international politics today. Habermas concludes by reflecting on the future of democracy in an increasingly globalized world. He is cautiously optimistic that Europe's multilateral social democratic model could offer a viable alternative to the US's more aggressive, neoliberal approach. However, he acknowledges that Europe faces its own challenges, including rising nationalism, economic instability, and the erosion of social welfare systems. To overcome these challenges, Europe must continue to strengthen its commitment to democracy, human rights, and social justice, while also working to build stronger international alliances. For Habermas, the future of the West depends on whether it can bridge the divide between these two competing visions of global order and work together to address the pressing challenges of the 21st century.